Alright, in this tutorial we are going to explore the Unity Hub and the Unity Editor. So when you launch the Unity Hub, or perhaps you are in the Projects tab, you can go to Installs, and if you followed the instructions in the assignment, you should see the Unity version installed. Maybe you don't see Android and iOS. These are modules that can be added. If we need them, we can add them later. Also in the Hub, we have a Learning tab, and that is worth checking out. Here, Unity shows some featured learning tutorials, say for instance exploring the Unity editor, so that would be a different take to what I'm going to do with you next. Create with VR, for instance, and many other tutorials that are accessible to you by simply clicking on them. But what we are going to do now is explore the editor, and in order to do that we need to create a project. So we go to Projects, and if you have first installed Unity, then this is going to be empty. Otherwise you will start prior projects you have created before. So we create a new project and give it a name. We call it Unity Tutorial. You can give it any name. You can also select a folder location. Also make a new folder. Select that on your hard drive. And then to the left, we have a few template choices. And the one we are going to use is the 3D URP. So URP stands for Universal Render Pipeline. That is a way of computing graphics Unity offers. Those that don't have URP are legacy methods to render objects. And further down we have many more such templates. Say for instance the HDRP template, so that stands for High Definition Render Pipeline. If you wish to have the highest fidelity in 3D graphics, you could use that template. Say for instance for an interactive architectural visualization, you would then run on a powerful desktop. There is also a VR template, an AR template, and so forth. Again, for this tutorial and in general for VR, we are going to use the Universal Render Pipeline because it offers the best real-time performance, even though it doesn't have all the great graphical features that the HD Render Pipeline has. So we click Create Project, and then Unity does its thing. All right, and when it has done its thing, you are greeted with the Unity Editor. So let me show you around a little bit. Firstly, we have a few portions here. So to the left, we have what's called the hierarchy. The hierarchy is similar to the scene graph you remember from Twinmotion. It contains all the elements in a scene that also has a name. It's currently the sample scene. So when you create a new project, you're greeted with a sample scene. And in that sample scene, we have a main camera, directional light, and a global volume. What these are, I will explain. Then here in the middle, we have what's called a scene view. It's currently active. And what's called a game view. So when you select the game view, the view changes from the scene view. And the convention here is that we edit scenes in the scene view, and when we play a scene, and it becomes live, so to say, and in some cases interactive, then we experience this in the game view. To run a game, we have the buttons up here, like play, pause, and forward. So for instance, if we hit play, Unity will compute a little bit, switch to the game view, and of course nothing's going on because there are no elements in our hierarchy yet. So you can hit stop and you are taken back to the scene view. Here to the right we have what's called the inspector. So the inspector in the beginning shows us a little bit of documentation, forums. So Unity has great forums where you can also post questions if you have, and Unity's large user base contains many friendly people who are happy to help. If something isn't working, you can also report a bug. But the main purpose of the inspector here is to see what our so-called game objects here in the hierarchy are doing or how they are configured. So for instance, I can select this directional light, and then the inspector changes and gives us a few parameters of that directional light. So for instance, it has a position, and when it comes to position and the unit format, it is very important to know that Unity is metric. 1 unit is 1 meter. There is no way to change this to imperial units. The reason might be that game projects are often international projects, and most of the world uses the international standard units, for which meters are a unit of length. So our directional light has a position of x0, y3, and z0. Another convention that is really important to know is that in the Unity game engine and in some other similar game engines, y is up. So if we select this coordinate with our directional light selected and we change it to, say, 5, it moves up. If we change it back to 3, it moves down. Z and X are moving or are coordinates that correspond to the typical X and Y axes you may know from CAD software. Then there are some other parameters. If you have these little hatched triangles, you can typically expand what they do. We will work with the inspector some more. So those are just the basics. Then down below we have the assets area, and the assets are elements that belong to our project. So we have scenes, settings, that's tutorial info, and so forth. And here we also have a browser. So for instance, in the assets portion, we can navigate to what's contained in the scenes, settings, tutorial info. In those assets, we can then create our own assets, as they are called, by either creating them inside Unity or by importing them. I should say that Unity is not a 3D modeling program. It is a game engine that allows us to work with, for instance, imported geometry, but also many more things. You can resize these portions of the interface, make them bigger or smaller. You can even move them around. And here, up top in window, jobs, component, game objects, etc., We have further things we can do, and as the tutorials progress, we will explore them. So here in, for instance, the panels, or rather the layouts, you can always reset all layouts. And then if you messed something up in your editor, it will revert to the default layout. So that's it for a quick intro on the Unity editor. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will continue working with game objects in the next tutorial.